Hunter Kanoki, and this is Fools FAQ, a show where I take the internet's most burning questions and give you an answer that'll make you the smartest person at your next thunderstorm. On today's episode, when nature double taps. You've probably heard it 1,000 times before, and maybe your friend said it to comfort you after something went horribly wrong. Don't worry, lightning never strikes twice in the same place. It's one of those things that just feels right. It's like nature has some rule book that says, okay, this spot has been zapped and we cannot do that again. Well, here's where things get interesting. That little piece of wisdom you've probably heard, it's about as reliable as predicting the future with a coin flip. Lightning's behavior isn't quite the simple story we've been told. In fact, what it really does when it's hunting for a place to strike might surprise you. And it definitely throws a wrench into that old myth changing how you see storms forever. So let's start with the most famous lightning magnet on the planet, the Empire State Building. Now, this giant isn't just famous for King Kong climbing it, it's essentially nature's favorite punching bag. Now, according to the National Weather Service, the Empire State Building gets struck by lightning on average of 25 times per year. That's roughly once every 2 weeks during storm season. And in fact, during one particularly dramatic storm, it was hit 8 times in just 24 minutes. But New York's most famous skyscraper isn't alone. The Willis Tower in Chicago, formerly known as the Sears Tower, can get hit as many as 100 times a year. Television towers and radio broadcasting antennas, some reaching over 2,000 feet tall, experience multiple direct strikes during every single thunderstorm that passes overhead. We're talking about structures that get hit every 30 seconds during these intense storms. So where does this myth come from in the first place? The saying likely originated from the simple observation that lightning storms move across landscapes relatively quickly. Now, people notice how once lightning struck a particular area, the storm would continue moving and that specific spot would remain strike-free for the remainder of that particular weather event. But to understand why lightning has absolutely no problem being a repeat offender, we need to talk about what lightning actually is. Lightning is essentially nature's way of balancing electrical charges that have built up in storm clouds. When we see that brilliant flash, we're witnessing the discharge of electricity so powerful that it literally breaks through the air, which normally acts as an insulator, creating what scientists call a stepped leader. So here's the key point. Lightning doesn't have a memory. Each electrical discharge is an independent event following the path of least electrical resistance from cloud to ground. Now, that path is determined by factors such as air currents, humidity changes, and the presence of conductive materials, not by whether lightning has visited that particular postal code before. Now, think of it this way. If you're water flowing downhill, you're going to follow the easiest route to the bottom. You don't care if water molecules took that same path yesterday, last week, or 5 minutes ago. Lightning behaves the same way. If a tall building, radio tower, or even tree provides the most direct route for electrical discharge, lightning will happily use that highway repeatedly. Now, some places are just lightning magnets by design. The taller an object, the shorter the distance that electrical charge needs to travel from cloud to ground. It's basic physics with a side of convenience. Now, this is why lightning rods exist in the first place. They're not trying to repel lightning, they're actually designed to attract it and then safely channel that electrical energy into the ground. The Empire State Building has a massive lightning rod at its peak, which is why it can take those 25 annual hits without turning into a giant electrical barbecue. The lightning strikes the rod, travels down copper wiring, and gets discharged safely into the ground. But this myth isn't just about giant buildings, it's often taken to mean that once lightning hits a spot on the ground, that spot is somehow safe from future strikes. Not true. Ground locations can also be repeat targets. Factors like moisture, soil composition, minerals, or nearby metal objects can make certain patches more attractive to lightning again and again. Again, lightning follows a path of least electrical resistance, and if those conditions stay the same, lightning can and will strike that ground repeatedly. So don't think of any place on Earth as a guaranteed safe spot just because it got hit once already. Mountains, trees, and even people can become repeat targets. And speaking of people, let me introduce you to Roy Sullivan, who basically won the world's worst lottery 7 times. Now, Roy was a park ranger in Virginia's Shenandoah National Park who, between 1942 and 1977, was struck by lightning 7 separate times and survived every single one. The Guinness World Records officially recognizes him as the person struck by lightning more times than any other human being. His colleagues called him the human lightning rod, and honestly, they weren't exaggerating. Now, Sullivan's first strike happened in 1942 when he was on a fire lookout tower that hadn't been equipped with a lightning rod yet. Lightning hit the tower multiple times before finally getting him as he tried to run to safety. Now, a 7th and final documented strike occurred in 1977 while he was fishing, when lightning struck him on the head and traveled down through his chest and stomach. Now, here's what makes Sullivan's story so particularly fascinating from a scientific perspective. Each strike occurred under different circumstances in different locations within the park. Now, this wasn't a case of him just repeatedly standing in the same cursed spot. Lightning found him in trucks, near power transformers, in his yard, inside ranger stations, and while walking trails. It's almost as if the universe was conducting a decades-long experiment on human electrical conductivity. Sullivan's experience, while extreme, proves another important point. Not only does lightning strike the same place twice, but it can strike the same person multiple times. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the odds of being struck by lightning in any given year are less than 1 in a million. The odds of being struck 7 times? Well, let's just say Roy should have bought lottery tickets instead of standing outside during thunderstorms. But the science gets even more interesting when you consider that what we think of as a single lightning strike is actually multiple electrical discharges happening in rapid succession. High-speed photography reveals that individual lightning bolts often consist of several pulses of electricity flowing down the same channel of ionized air. So technically, lightning is already striking the same place multiple times within what appears to be a single flash. Modern research facilities and weather monitoring stations have documented this phenomenon extensively. Now, lightning data shows that in climates with moderate thunderstorm activity, places like Pennsylvania, New York, and West Virginia, lightning will statistically strike a typical quarter-acre area once every 100 years. And for areas with higher storm frequency like Central Florida, those repeat strikes can happen much more often. Radio stations and TV broadcasting antennas in Florida's Lightning Alley can see well over 100 strikes per year. And these structures are essentially lightning magnets, and meteorologists can practically guarantee that any thunderstorm passing directly over them will result in at least one direct hit. The practical implications of understanding lightning's repeat behavior are actually quite important. And engineers designing tall buildings, communication towers, and other structures need to account for multiple strikes over the lifetime of the building. Lightning protection systems aren't designed for one-and-done scenarios. They're built to handle repeated electrical assaults year after year. Now, this is why modern skyscrapers have elaborate lightning protection systems that include multiple lightning rods, extensive grounding networks, and careful attention to creating pass-through electrical currents that won't damage a building or harm its occupants. Now, the goal isn't to prevent lightning strikes, it's to actually manage them safely when they inevitably occur again and again. Now, for buildings taller than 60 meters, international lightning protection standards actually require protecting not just the roof, but the upper 20% of the building's height from lateral lightning strikes. These side strikes become increasingly common as buildings get taller because lightning can approach from multiple angles, not just straight down from above. So, the next time someone tries to comfort you with the old lightning never strikes twice wisdom, you can politely inform them that lightning is actually quite fond of return visits. Whether it's the Empire State Building getting zapped 25 times a year, radio towers serving as electrical pincushions during every storm, or poor Roy Sullivan becoming nature's personal lightning magnet. The evidence is overwhelming. Lightning absolutely, positively, without question, strikes the same place twice. In fact, if you've got a tall, isolated conductive structure, lightning doesn't just strike twice, it strikes as often as atmospheric conditions allow. Mother Nature apparently never got the memo about the one-strike rule, and frankly, she seems to take a certain satisfaction in proving human folk wisdom wrong, one spectacular electrical discharge at a time. Thank you so much for listening to Fool's FAQ. Feel free to leave a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts, as it also helps new listeners discover the show. For more fascinating answers to your burning questions, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and always stay curious.